We are going to give you 3 archaeological finds that prove the Bible is real.
Okay, you ready?
I think I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, this first one is about a finding that they found in one of the tombs in Jerusalem
Okay.
that is older than the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay, so what did they find?
So, well, let me kind of set up the
Set up the
story here
Okay,
a little bit.
all right.
So what happens is archaeologists go and they find all these tombs in Jerusalem. Now, a tomb back then was generational.
Okay.
So, everybody in the family that passed away would be buried in this tomb. And with this tomb, they would put some of their personal items in there. And they were on a bench. They had benches in these tombs that they laid the people on. And then as they passed, within like a year, as they disintegrated.
So there's a lot of tombs.
Yeah, there's a lot of tombs.
There's a lot. Okay, I got it.
There's a lot of tombs. And so they would go in, they would take the bones, and they would take the personal items, and they would put it underneath in a basement of this tomb that was called a repository.
Okay.
Okay, so the archaeologists would always find these tombs. And because they're so old, they were always robbed.
So people found them and they robbed. Okay, so kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark type thing.
They would go in.
Or the Egyptians and the pharaohs where they had all their
goodies down below. Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
So the robbers would go in and they would take all these goodies, right?
Okay.
And so, we're talking 2,000 years, so they've had a lot of time to do this. Dr. Barkay, which is a really well-known archaeologist, in 1979.
Okay.
He's doing his little survey around in Jerusalem, which he always has.
Right.
And he comes across a tomb that he's, digging in. Can't find anything. In the repository, it's filled in. There's nothing in it. He's really disappointed.
I bet.
Well, he has actually some children that are having a class on archaeology that are helping him dig.
How old are the children?
Well, they didn't say exactly
Just
how old they were,
students
but they were old enough to, I would say maybe 10 to 14.
4-year-old with like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, well, they were just kind of learning.
Okay.
So, it's just a school project.
Right.
So this one little boy named Nathan was begging Dr. Barkay.
Okay.
And he goes into the tomb, and without Doctor knowing,
all right,
and he breaks through this floor in the repository.
Wow. Okay.
So he comes out and he's like, "Oh, look what I found!" And the doctor's like, "Where did you get that? Because you're not supposed to touch anything, right?" So they go immediately into the tomb, and they see that what has happened is that there was probably an earthquake or something. And the floor has been covered by earth. So it tricked even the archaeologists that there was stuff below this floor. So as Nathan breaks through it, so they start digging in there and they find all of the pots and this personal items. And way back at the far corner at the bottom of this tomb, which would be the oldest because, they've stacked up family heirlooms. So way down the bottom, they find in this little pot 2 little scrolls.
Okay.
Now, these scrolls are made of silver, not paper.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Which was interesting. And as they're unrolling these 2 scrolls, they see that the Hebrew writing on these scrolls was dated in like the First Temple period.
Okay.
Which would actually be during Solomon.
Right. Okay.
So now they've realized that these scrolls are actually older than the Dead Sea Scrolls, which they found in the 50s.
Okay, so what is the importance of a Dead Sea? So for those of them that don't know, what are the Dead Sea Scrolls?
So the Dead Sea Scrolls were actually biblical writings on these paper scrolls, and that's how they used to write everything, was on these paper scrolls. And they found these scrolls with all the genuine Hebrew Bible on it.
Okay, so from the Dead Sea Scrolls is where we got some of our Bible writings. Bible writings.
Right,
okay.
Right.
So these are older
than
what
those.
they found than those
that
actually they wrote the Bible from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Which is interesting because the Hebrew writing on these silver scrolls was different than the Hebrew writing on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Mm-hmm.
So they realized that these silver scrolls are older. And people, now what's interesting on these scrolls is that they see, because you're thinking, okay, so they had writings on the scroll, right?
Big deal. Right?
Well, the scrolls, they found Hebrew writing of YHVH,
right,
which is the secret name of God. It means Yahweh.
Right.
So they see that on the scroll, and as they unroll it even more, they see Numbers 6.
Oh, really? Okay.
In the Bible, which I'm going to read to you what it says because it's a little different than what it says in our Bible. Of course, it's been translated different ways. So in the first one, it says, bless you, YHVH, and keep you. May YHVH shine his face upon you and be gracious to you.
Okay.
And then on the second scroll, the smaller one, it says, bless you, YHVH. May shine YHVH his face upon you and give you peace.
And I believe that, people are going, what's the difference? What YHVH is back then, God's name was so holy that they didn't even want to say the name of God because it was considered, they were, I believe, almost unworthy of repeating the amazing name of God. So that's where those YHVH came up. Okay, so you gave me all this good information. So I know there's a lot of doubters out there that are going, okay, big deal. So why does this prove that the Bible is real?
There's like evidence of Hebrew writing and scriptures that are actually in the Bible that are so old.
Before the Bible, before they found the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, because we're talking 1200 to 586 BC.
This reinforces it.
Yeah.
The Bible. Yeah. And I guess, it kind of comes down to the people that are kind of doubters is, at some point you have to ask yourself, how much evidence do you need?
Yeah.
And it's like they keep on finding all these things that point to the Bible, and the two just go together that prove the Bible is true. So how much evidence is enough evidence for you to say, there's some validity here? So the next one that you have for us, I know there's evidence in the Bible that is like the oldest book in the Bible. So this is Genesis. So this is as old as you can get, right? Yeah. So what is...
And at the beginning. This is Genesis 2.
Right. And it's the Garden of Eden. Yeah. Right? Around the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
So what did they find?
I just love
Tell us more, Kim.
So what I really like about this one is the Bible is actually pointing us to the place.
Okay.
Okay, so God is telling us exactly where this is. So big deal, right?
I don't know. Is it a big deal?
Well, yeah. So why is this a big deal? Well, I'm going to tell you.
Well, please tell us.
Let me read this first.
Okay, you're going to read something?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Genesis 2:10.
Okay.
10 through 14. So a river watering the garden flowed from Eden.
No, is this the Garden of Eden?
You just said that.
Okay, yes, the Bible said garden, so I just want to make sure it was
to your
the garden. Okay, the Garden of Eden.
Okay, from there, it was separated into 4 headwaters. Okay. The name of the first is the Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold.
Ooh.
The gold of that land is good, and aromatic resin and onyx are also there. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is the Tigris. It runs along the east side of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. Okay, so God's totally told us exactly where to go.
Where the Garden of Eden it basically is, because this one river starts at the Garden of Eden and splits out into 4 other rivers.
Right.
So it's pretty easy.
However, if you look today, and we're in the area of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq area, there's only 3 rivers.
Oh, that presents a problem.
That herein lies.
Okay, so then you're going, well, maybe the Bible isn't true because we can't find the fourth river.
There's no fourth river.
Okay.
But we do know that the river is called the Bashan, but there's no river.
Right.
Right.
But they can see today the other three rivers. I know those other rivers exist today, because I've heard of those rivers.
You can see them. You
Yeah.
can
You can
get
go
on
into
them
the river if you want to.
I mean, they're quite apparent.
Okay.
Okay, so in Iraq, in the city of Al-Qara, there's two rivers that come together.
Okay.
And this is the Tigris and the Euphrates.
Heard of those. Okay.
Piece of cake, right?
Right.
Okay, so then we got to go on, and we go further south, and the Gihon River flows in Cush, like it says in the Bible, and it comes into the Tigris and the Euphrates.
Okay.
Piece of cake, they're all connecting. Here we go, right? Okay, so the fourth river, the Bible tells us that this river traveled along Havilah.
Okay.
So it comes through the entire land. Well, if you look on a map, that has to start from Egypt and it flows towards Iran, which is in the Saudi Arabia area in the desert. So, but they can't find a river that does that. They find other rivers that go around there, but they don't flow across this Havilah. Some guys found an ancient riverbed back in the 80s. And they thought, it's kind of weird that there's a riverbed here and there's pebbles in this riverbed made of quartz and basalt. And they're not indigenous to this area.
So they don't. Okay.
So they're like, well, what's the I mean, you're in the desert, 500 miles away, up in the Alpha Haz Mountains.
Okay.
Okay. In these mountains, it actually is indigenous to have quartz and basalt.
Okay.
So they know that this is where it's originated.
Okay. All right. Okay, that makes sense.
And they can flow this down to this bottom part where all these pebbles are that have gone from a rock into this little baby pebble. So obviously they've been worn away by water. And as they start looking, there's this huge ancient riverbed where all of these pebbles have flown down from the mountains. It kind of disappears and goes under some sand, but then it reappears right where the other three rivers connect.
Okay.
And so they can tell that this is where all four rivers have connected, and this is where God says the Garden of Eden would have been. You think about it.
And you never know when the other river dried up.
Right. Well, they actually think that this river actually dried up in 2000 BC, I believe it was.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was quite a while ago.
A long time ago, right?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was like 2000 BC, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So, yeah.
This next one I just love. I mean, I just love everything about Jesus. I mean, I just...
You do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just,
love the guy.
I just love the guy. I mean, just his life and what he stood for. And, the more that I research Jesus, it's just, I mean, he was just so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it, right? So anyways, this next one I love.
That's good. I love this one too.
Do you?
Yeah. Okay. So this is about Jesus's tomb.
Ooh.
And there's quite a bit out there about Jesus's tomb. So
yeah, I bet, because he's a very controversial figure.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people, I have to say, that are trying to make this something wrong.
Yeah.
And they're benefiting off of it. You know, so you really have to, again, do your research. So this is really interesting because it didn't lead to the end that I wanted. And a lot of other people don't want.
So were you saying that you're a little disappointed?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I'm intrigued.
This is a little disappointing.
Okay. Well, proceed, my love.
Okay. So here's what we know. We know that Jesus died.
Yes.
And was buried in a tomb and rose on the third day.
Yes.
Okay, so back in his day, of course, the girls go and they see that the tomb is empty, right?
And let me just point something out. That this is so interesting about the Bible because, with the resurrection of Jesus, whoever the writer whoever wrote it, the story, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, you would be your story would not have a lot of credit to put a woman was the first one that found Jesus. And the story goes that Mary was the first one to find Jesus. Now, if you back then wanted to make your story creditable, you would never use a woman.
Yeah.
Because women back then had no credibility.
Right.
You would have used men.
Right.
And that's just what's so cool is that the writers just, if you wanted to doctor the story, they would have used a man.
Oh, yeah.
But that just proves that these guys just wrote the truth and what they saw.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool that a woman was the first one to find Jesus and had zero credibility as a woman back then.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
That's good evidence right there.
I mean, yeah, the Bible. I mean, it's like if you wanted to fake the story, you would have used a man of some authority.
All right, so here we go. We're going to go back to the Bible because that's the best place to start, right? So in John 19:41, he tells us, we are told that the tomb is outside of the city of Jerusalem,
right.
Outside the city walls, and it's near Golgotha.
Okay,
that's what we know in the Bible. Now, fast forward after Jesus' death, Jerusalem has grown to this huge metropolis, and so the city walls grow out.
They keep on pushing the walls out? Okay.
And now the tomb is inside the city walls. They call this the third wall of Jerusalem. Okay, now here come the big bad Romans. It's AD 70, and they demolish Jerusalem. It is demolished to rubble.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during all this time, the Christians of Jerusalem know where Jesus' tomb is.
Yeah, they would.
And was.
Yeah.
Because now it's under rubble.
Yeah, I mean, they would, historically, mouth to mouth.
Yeah. And so they're continuously going back to this place to remember Jesus.
Makes sense.
It's a holy place.
Yeah.
Well, the great emperor of Rome at that time, whose name Hadrian, comes in and he says, I'm going to rebuild the city on top of all this rubble. He decides he's going to build his temple on top of Jesus's tomb because he doesn't want all these Christians going there to
worship,
praise him.
They wanted to eliminate Jesus completely. They wanted to obliterate any evidence of Jesus they could.
And he didn't want anybody worshiping Jesus. So he fills it all up with dirt, big, huge mound of dirt, then puts this huge stone plate on top of it. And then, that weren't enough, he builds a temple on top of that with his god Jupiter.
Yeah. Can you imagine God? He's like, okay, you desecrated my son, and you put an idol on top of him.
Okay, so back in the day, you have to know this. There's two writers. There's Saint Jerome, who was best known for writing the Bible in Latin. So he's a Christian. Okay. And then there's also a historian named Eusebius.
Right.
Both of which are living during this time. Okay. And are writing.
This is where we're getting our evidence. Okay.
This is where they're writing all these historical facts.
Historical evidence.
Okay. So now Hadrian's done his little doodah with his temple. Okay. So fast forward 300 years, and Constantine takes over as the emperor of Rome.
Okay.
Constantine is a Christian.
Well, that's good.
And he says, no. We're taking down this temple. No more temple. I know that Jesus' tomb is underneath it because
historical evidence.
Of the historical evidence.
Okay.
So they start demolishing this temple and the stone and the dirt, and they find the tomb down below. Now, it's been destroyed.
I bet.
Because of all this chaos going on, a lot of wars and stuff. So, but they rebuilt a church over the top of this to commemorate it. Constantine made sure that it was protected, and it has been protected by this Church of Resurrection ever since.
Today. I mean, you can go visit it today.
You can go visit it today. And they actually have a big hoorah every year. I don't know if hoorah is the best word for it, but they commemorate Jesus's death and his resurrection. And it's a big deal. I'll put a picture in there because it's really cool. And so they still have that today. You can go visit it. Here's what's disappointing.
Uh-oh. Kim's disappointing.
Well, because you always see the pictures where they roll, they have a stone and you can go in the tomb and you can see the bench like I talked about before where they laid, the person to die. And it doesn't have that. However, archaeologists and geologists have found that this tomb that they do have covered and protected is actually part of the third wall of Jerusalem. So they know it's old enough, and they can tell that this is where Jesus's tomb hole is. You just can't go into it.
Okay.
But this is where everybody goes to remember him.
So if I'm a skeptic, I would say, you know what, guys? They just found a random tomb, and they said, hey, this is the tomb of Jesus. Let's make a big deal about it. Let's put a church on it and call it the tomb. But really, it's just some old geezer's tomb that they wanted to do this. But again, historical evidence of these two writers and historians of how the Christians gathered here, how the walls make sense, and how the tomb was destroyed, and the historical evidence of the emperor trying to get rid of it, and the historical evidence of Constantine. There is so much historical evidence that this is the actual tomb of Jesus. So if this is the actual tomb of Jesus, he did live, die, and he's in heaven, and then you really have to consider the Bible, because if he lived and the whole New Testament is about Jesus, you have to consider what if Jesus said and what he said is true. Am I missing the boat? I guess I don't know how to put it. You have to take Jesus' writings and his claims then seriously, that he says, I am. If you see, I am God in human form. If you see me, you see the Father. I am the only way to heaven. All these claims that Jesus made. I just thought.
Praise Jesus.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
You want to do research and form your own opinion. Don't just take somebody else's opinion.